Okay, I think this is going to be our final video cast. As you can see, the light's kind of blaring on me because I've been working on Viterbo for about 11 hours today. So trust me, I feel your pain sometimes. I just had a lot to get done and just really tried to use my time wisely. This video cast is Best Practices in Literacy Instruction, our alternative text, chapter 3. And this is the last informational one that I will be doing for you before you do your chapters. Again, I just encourage you to put your efforts into sharing the information, but make the assignments as easy and doable as you can. As you can see, we've got a lot going on in this course, and I know that it sometimes may feel overwhelming, but my hands are kind of tied with a lot of what we have to do. So I just encourage you to be sensitive to that. Chapter 3 talks about best practices for motivating students to read. So this is something that is definitely near and dear to my heart, the motivation. And it starts out by just saying, what do we mean by motivation? It's not just having fun while reading, but is focused on 3 aspects: interest, confidence, and motivation. And so when we talk about motivated to read, it's just not, oh, I really like to read, but there's more to it. It connects it to the Common Core, saying that they have such high standards that it requires that students are motivated, so they have the dedication to accomplish the complex tasks that are included in the Common Core. Interest was the first one, and it says we often think of interest, which can include enjoying a book, being excited about an author, or being delighted by new information. But researchers often refer to interest as the intrinsic motivation. And there's a section in this chapter that really talked about a theme that I think many people have had discussions, the intrinsic motivation versus the extrinsic motivation, kind of a tongue twister there. And the research is overwhelmingly in support of it needs to be intrinsic. When you have extrinsic, and I do that on occasion, and I realize that, but that when that's your mode of operation, then students are working for the reward and not for what they're gaining from the reading activity. And it says that once the reward is over, then kind of they forget or they let it slide. And so that intrinsic is so critical. The second point was having confidence, and it just says believing in yourself is more closely linked to achievement than any other motivation throughout school. And I think this is just so telling that when a student believes they can do that, then they can be successful, and when they don't believe they can, they will really struggle in that confidence. And then the third one talks about dedication, and with dedication, it just talks about, bottom line is we can't always do things that kids want to do. Sometimes they have to read things or do assignments that we know is best practice for them, but may not be their choice. And the dedication is just those times when they have to read something or complete work that would not be their choice, but they believe that reading is important and they will persist. That's when we call it dedication. So if I'm motivated, if it's something I'm interested in, I'm going to do it. But it's understanding that there are times I need to still stick with it. Under the dedication, it looks at persistence, valuing knowledge from the reading, and values for the future. And you can kind of just look at what those are. And just absolutely kind of common sense. We just want them to be able to stick with what they're reading. So evidence-based practices in classroom motivation. It says that much research data shows that reading motivation has come of age as an indispensable ingredient of teacher preparation, thus being provided for students. So what they're saying is, when they look at things that teachers need to be able to go out into the field and do, what they're realizing is we've not made a priority of motivating students and what that looks like and how important that is. The only conclusive data about an intervention for this is it's fairly new and difficult thing to measure. And it does show that the intrinsically motivated is much more important. Thus, we need to guard against quick fixes. There are no quick fixes. This is an over time kind of thing. So what are the best practices? Talks about relevance. says that naturally, when it appeals to them, they're going to be more motivated. We need to know what their interests are. We need to know our students. We need to understand, what they're interested in, what they like, and what background they have, what experiences, so that we can do the best that we can. It says at the bottom there, however, sometimes the teacher will need to create that relevance, because all of our students can't experience everything or know everything or be interested in the same things. So sometimes we have to really work to find those specific materials that we're looking for. It also talks about teacher support, and the quality of the teacher-student relationship is vital. Really, a lot of research that supports when students believe that the teacher cares about them, they can accomplish so much more. And I think, again, it's a fine line. We want them to be, intrinsically motivated. We want them to believe in themselves and have confidence. But when they believe a teacher cares about them, they will accomplish a lot. I know that, again, I've mentioned I have a student teacher, and as she asks me questions, and it makes me reflect on what I think about my classroom and my own practice. And one of the things I said to her the other day was, I'm very firm with the kids. I have very high expectations. And we talked about evidence of that, things she had seen. But I said at the same time, if you ask my kids, they believe I would walk through fire for them. They know I am there for them, that, I may have high expectations, but man, I will circle the wagons and protect them at all cost. And so I think that really is a critical piece. So it also talks about, we want to motivate students, but there are also those things that can decrease motivation. And it talks about some things like that negative feedback from teachers. You're consistently scolded, make them feel bad for having wrong answers, giving them no choices or limited choices. When books are always just extremely hard to read and they can't find success, and the books are irrelevant. They have no connection to or interest or background built. Affirming practices may foster motivational growth, but undermining practices may generate losses in motivation. So just basically in closing, every teacher is a motivator and has potential to make a difference. And so I encourage you, even though there's no assignment attached to this, just stop and ask yourself, what do I do in my classroom? And think about the things we talked about in chapter 1 and 2 of this text. What do I do in my classroom that would help motivate students? Do my students truly know how committed I am to their success? Do I make sure I understand the difference between intrinsic motivation and extrinsic? And am I limited in the extrinsic? I think it just really goes to say, I kind of feel like this is the gut kind of thing, the heart kind of thing, not instructional materials and whatnot, but it's what you do from the heart. So that is chapter 3 of our alternative text.